February 27th, 1991. Over the barren, sun-baked expanse of the Kuwaiti desert, the horizon flickers with otherworldly light. Plumes of blackened smoke rise like columns to the sky, fed by hundreds of burning oil wells, each a monument to destruction, each a torch marking the path of war. Against this hellish backdrop, American M1A1 Abrams tanks press forward, their armored hulls silhouetted by flame, unrelenting in the hunt. What was once the world's fourth-largest army now splinters amid chaos, facing nothing less than annihilation. In just 100 hours, the most technologically advanced fighting force ever assembled is about to achieve the most one-sided military victory of the modern era. This is the story of how, in less than a week, America redefined the very nature of war. To understand how such a historic triumph was possible, we must travel back to August 2, 1990. In the dead of night, as most of Kuwait slept unaware, the ground trembled beneath the treads of a mechanized juggernaut. 100,000 Iraqi Republican Guard troops, hardened by years of brutal war with Iran, swept across the border in a perfectly synchronized assault. By sunrise, the small, oil-rich nation was overwhelmed. In a matter of hours, Kuwait, long envied for its vast petroleum reserves, was under the boot of Saddam Hussein. Seemingly unstoppable, Iraq's army had all the makings of a regional superpower: 1 million troops, thousands of tanks and artillery pieces, decades of Soviet support, and a leadership convinced of its invincibility. Saddam's calculations were cold and clear. Iraq's military, fresh from an exhausting yet hardening 8-year war with Iran, was battle-tested. America, Saddam believed, remained haunted by the ghosts of Vietnam, politically divided, weary of foreign involvement, and unwilling to bear the cost of blood and treasure. Yet the stage was set for a very different outcome. Half a world away, President George H.W. Bush sat in the Oval Office, faced with a decision that would reshape the global order. "This will not stand," he vowed. The invasion, he declared, was not a local conflict. It was an affront to the principles of international law. In response, he launched Operation Desert Shield, setting into motion the largest U.S. military buildup since World War II. Like a modern-day Normandy landing, warships loaded with M1A1 Abrams tanks crossed the Atlantic, while an armada of transport planes delivered equipment and personnel around the clock. The scale defied belief. In just 6 months, 700,000 coalition soldiers from 35 nations converged on Saudi Arabia. The world, in a display of rare unity, chose resistance over appeasement. Even the Soviet Union, Iraq's longtime patron, joined the chorus of condemnation. The United Nations issued an unambiguous ultimatum. Saddam's army had until January 15, 1991, to leave Kuwait, or face the full force of international wrath. But the Iraqi dictator doubled down, convinced that coalition resolve would evaporate. As the crisis deepened, command of coalition ground operations fell to General H. Norman Schwarzkopf, a man who combined Vietnam-honed experience with an eye for innovation. Outside observers anticipated a slow, bloody slog through heavily defended Kuwaiti territory, a replay of past quagmires. Instead, Schwarzkopf devised a maneuver cloaked in deception: the left hook. His forces would stretch across 300 miles of desert, feint a frontal assault to pin Iraqi defenders in place, and then launch a massive armored swing through remote western Iraq, striking at the heart of Saddam's best units from an unexpected direction. If successful, it would catch the bulk of the Iraqi army off guard, encircling and destroying them before they could react. Saddam, for his part, prepared for a frontal battle. He ordered vast defensive works along the Kuwait-Saudi border, dense minefields, tank traps, mutually supporting bunkers. The Republic Guard's elite divisions dug in, determined to create another Vietnam, bloody, grinding, demoralizing. But Saddam had grossly underestimated the coalition's ability to fight tomorrow's war, not yesterday's. Long before ground forces advanced, Schwarzkopf unleashed a different kind of onslaught. On January 17, 1991, Operation Desert Storm commenced with an air campaign of unprecedented ferocity and coordination. F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighters, nearly invisible to radar, punched deep into the heart of Baghdad, taking out command bunkers and communication sites with surgical precision. Tomahawk cruise missiles, launched from ships hundreds of miles away, struck targets with pinpoint accuracy. At high altitude, B-52 bombers loosed tidal waves of explosives, carpet-bombing Republican Guard encampments, railheads, and convoys. Day after day, night after night, the barrage was relentless. Over the course of 42 straight days, coalition pilots flew more than 100,000 sorties, dropping 88,000 tons of ordnance. Iraqi air defenses were pummeled into impotence. Their once vaunted air force, the sixth largest in the world, scrambled in disarray, some pilots even fleeing to Iran rather than face certain death. Of the 400 Iraqi aircraft that took to the skies, the majority were destroyed or abandoned. By contrast, coalition losses remained in the double digits. When the bombers returned to base and the smoke drifted clear, a sobering reality set in. Saddam's army, battered and blind, had lost the ability to coordinate, reinforce, or even communicate across its shattered front. On February 24, 1991, at precisely 4:00 a.m., Operation Desert Sabre began, the opening move in the ground war. The waiting was over. Across the windswept desert, 3,000 coalition tanks and 1,500 artillery pieces surged into motion, the largest armored charge since the Second World War. The coalition attacked on 3 fronts. British and American Marines launched diversionary assaults along the coast. Arab allies stormed into Kuwait City from the south, while the main American thrust, a combined might of Seven Corps, executed Schwarzkopf's cunning left hook. At the tip of this armored spear raced the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment, elite soldiers commanding M1A1 Abrams tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles, equipped with digital communication systems and position tracking via the then-nascent Global Positioning System. Their orders were clear: make contact with the Republican Guard, pin them down, and hold until the full weight of American armor could deliver the decisive blow. The moment of truth arrived at a desolate coordinate known as 73 Easting. Captain H.R. McMaster and his Eagle Troop crested a low ridge and encountered an entire Iraqi division laid out before them. On paper, the fight should have been even. Dozens of entrenched T-72s and T-55s dug in, ready, and waiting. But war isn't fought on paper, and the qualitative edge was overwhelming. The M1A1's thermal sights rendered the sandstorm and darkness irrelevant. American crews could see their targets long before they were seen. The tank's 120mm gun, firing next-generation depleted uranium rounds, could destroy an enemy vehicle with a single shot, even at extreme range. In just 23 minutes, Eagle Troop obliterated 28 enemy tanks, 16 armored personnel carriers, and 30 trucks, without losing a single vehicle. The Iraqis, unable to effectively return fire, suffered catastrophic losses. It was a pattern repeated across the front. Wherever coalition forces met the enemy, the technological gulf proved insurmountable. The slaughter only intensified as more American and coalition forces swept in. At Objective Norfolk, another armored clash erupted in the darkness, a full-scale engagement amid sandstorms and confusion. The 1st Infantry Division shattered the Republican Guard's elite Tawakkalna Division, leaving hundreds of burning tanks in its wake. Thermal imaging, unaffected by weather, darkness, or camouflage, gave American gunners a godlike advantage, turning what could have been a deadly contest into a one-sided execution. Even as Iraq's best attempted to regroup at Medina Ridge, the onslaught was unstoppable. The 1st Armored Division, supported by Apache helicopters and fearsome A-10 Warthog attack planes, pounded Iraqi formations from above and below. Nowhere was safe. Old-fashioned bravery met relentless high-tech murder. By the morning of February 28th, 100 hours after the ground war began, it was over. Iraqi forces, what little remained, fled in disarray. Over 1,000 Iraqi tanks were destroyed. Entire divisions ceased to exist, and lines of surrendering soldiers snaked across the desert, desperate to escape certain death. The final tally is staggering. 41 Iraqi divisions were rendered combat ineffective. 3,000 tanks and nearly 2,000 armored vehicles were destroyed. Coalition losses? A mere 148 battle deaths. For every coalition casualty, the Iraqis suffered hundreds. It was the most lopsided victory in living memory. But the legacy of the 100-hour war went far beyond casualty counts. It heralded a new epoch, where precision, information, and technological overmatch dictated the course of battle. The triumph in the desert was not just due to bravery or numbers, but to a new paradigm. Satellites directing bombs through windows, tanks seeing in total darkness, commanders tracking entire armies on digital displays. When the smoke of war finally cleared and Kuwait was liberated, the world bore witness to a revolution. The age of tank warfare was not over. It had evolved. America, through a storm of steel and fire, had shown what the future of war would look like. In that fleeting 100 hours, the balance of power, the art of command, and the very calculus of victory had all been rewritten. This was not just the story of a war won in 100 hours, it was the dawn of a new era.